sky blue. Water makes things wet. Water itself, though, not wet. At least that's how I see it. Kevin Borba, Locked On Buffs, is here because Colorado's added another transfer in the least shocking piece of news, of course, across the Big 12. But it's along the offensive line here, Kevin. And I think anytime you make an effort to bolster the trenches since Deion Sanders got there, that's the right thing to do. It's been a problem. But now you look around and go, wait a minute. They got Xavier Hill from Memphis. You got Jordan Seaton back for his second year. That's a former five-star. You bring in another veteran here. Tell us about him first, and then we'll get to the impact on that Buffs unit up front.
Yeah, so they brought in Roye Jr. I believe that's how you say his last name, Roye, for those of you who are spelling and phonetical experts at home. He's a guy that played at Maryland, played over 400-something snaps, only allowed one career sack, started, I think it was 7 or 8 games this past year for the Terrapins. And again, you bring in a Big Ten/SEC guy, which has kind of been Colorado's calling card this entire offseason of finding big offensive linemen who have played and have experienced in the SEC or Big Ten. And I think they're just trying to figure out what combination can work. And I think Roye will add to a very interesting right tackle battle because there's a lot of right tackle names in the mix now.
Right tackle battle for a guy who did start for Maryland last year. Why do you think he came to the Buffs if he's not guaranteed to start?
Well, for one, I think playing for Deion Sanders is attractive, right? I think there's that. I also think Deion Sanders and Colorado are sort of advertising like, hey, come be the solution. And I think for a lot of guys, that is enticing, right? He only started, or I think he started 7 or 8 games. So he wasn't starting every game at Maryland, right? So I think he has the opportunity to start. Maybe they'll kick him inside if he doesn't win the right tackle battle. I don't know if that's in his calling cards. But I do think there's an appeal to play for Colorado and be a part of something. And he has multiple years of eligibility. So if it doesn't happen this year, it could happen next year or 2026.
Do you think that if he does wind up starting, it's an upgrade over what Colorado had at that position last year?
Yeah, I said on my show countless times that no one from last year's offensive line outside of Jordan Seaton and Cash Cleveland, who now plays for Texas Tech, should start again, right? I don't think any of those guys were the answer. I think they all tried really hard, and I'm not trying to take away from them. But, again, Colorado gave up. Shedeur Sanders was sacked. I don't know the number off the top of my head. He was sacked 90-something times in 2 years, and they had the worst rushing attack in college football. So, unfortunately, I don't think any of those guys were the answer. And so when you bring in all of these new pieces, I think you have to find a solution somewhere.
There are a lot of guys, we've mentioned a couple, and there are others in the room. And I do think an underrated part of this Colorado offensive line, Jordan Seaton has to take a step forward. I mean, mega talent, of course, probably the biggest high school recruit that Deion Sanders has landed because they are so portal heavy every single year. And I have long wondered and continue to wonder if you can build a high-end offensive line strictly through the portal. They're certainly making a swing at it this year. Xavier Hill was one of the top offensive linemen that moved in either portal cycle, coming from Memphis, where he started for multiple years, graded out really well, has played a couple of different spots. So I think the potential is certainly there. But I think we were saying this a little bit last year, Kevin, right? Where, you brought in some transfers and you had a big-time 5-star. And I think Seaton has to take that step forward, but that's still not the only question mark for this group, right?
Yeah, I think we said this we had this very exact conversation last year. And I said this last year. And so I'm going to say it again because now I believe it even more. I think this right here is the final attempt at building a line through the portal, I guess you could say. Like, I'm not going to say they're not going to take offensive linemen in the future, but if you really think that they're going to go for a third year straight and have, like, say this offensive line doesn't pan out somehow, right? Would you try it again next year? I wouldn't want to try it again next year, right? You'd have 3 sample sizes of like, hey, we've tried to get 4 to 5 offensive linemen to start right away from the portal, and it has not worked out. So I think this unit has potential. I think you were kind of alluding to that earlier. They've brought in 7, right? There's 7 new offensive linemen in the mix from the portal. They all have a common theme. Do you want to guess the common theme before I?
Experience. I'm going to guess experience is the theme.
Experience, and there's a certain. I'll tell you the schools and a little background on each, and you tell me if you notice anything. So Roye, Maryland, 6'6", 294, not the biggest guy of the bunch by any means. Larry Johnson, 6'7", 350 from Tennessee.
Hold on. Can we just appreciate what you just factually said. 6'6", 294. He's not that big.
Not the biggest.
He's not the biggest guy they got.
Yeah, and then when you hop to Larry, who's 6'7", 350, it's like, okay, he's tiny. But again, Xavier Hill, 6'4", 320. Monotamini, that's from Memphis. Monotamini, Ole Miss, 6'4", 345. Zylan Chrysler, 6'6", 335, Illinois. Zarian McGill, 6'2", 308 from Louisiana Tech. He was an all-conference center, though. Aki OG is what I call him because I don't want to butcher his last name. 6'4", 314 or 315, and that is it. Did you notice anything particular about these fellas?
They're all over 300 pounds.
All over 300 pounds. A lot of them are from the SEC or the Big Ten, and I know the Big 12 wants to see itself as on par with those two conferences, but those two conferences typically have the advantage in the trenches. And I think getting guys who have that sort of makeup and experience could help Colorado maybe reach a next level if it works out.
Yeah, and the next question that pops in my mind when talking about the Buffs offensive line, of course, is who are they blocking for? Kevin, Kaidon Salter comes over from Liberty, experienced. He regressed this past season, goes to the Buffs to try to restart things. Should have a good array of weapons. I think Colorado's done a good job reloading without Travis Hunter and others like Jimmy Horn from last year's receiving core. But is it going to be Kaidon Salter? Is Juju Lewis, who could be seen as not supposed to play this year? He's actually a year ahead of schedule age-wise. And, Ryan Williams played. But he's a receiver, and this guy's a quarterback. So how have you seen those two quarterbacks battling it out through spring football?
Yeah, I think they've both given a lot of reasons as to why they could each start. I think Julian Lewis played pretty well in the spring game. He had some nice moments. I think he probably, if you watch him play or go back and watch a spring ball, I think you'd be shocked to see how quick the ball gets out of his hand. Like he throws a nice ball. I just feel like he looked like a 17-year-old kid during the spring game. And I think throughout the spring practice, from what I was told by people in the building, it's kind of Kaidon Salter's job to lose. And I assume that would happen, right? He's a 4th or 5th year guy who's started multiple years, was a former blue chip recruit himself, and he has more experience. And he brings a different dynamic to the offense, right? He's a quarterback he's one of the best dual threats in the country. So I think Colorado needs his versatility, and they need his experience. And I think that will sort of win out. And I'm not saying Julian Lewis won't play, but I do think Kaidon Salter gets a nod when they play Georgia Tech in their opening game.
Just wait for the first time Kaidon Salter struggles. The downside of recruiting a big time quarterback is anytime Kaidon Salter struggles, put in the freshman. Put him in. This guy stinks.
He has a especially Juju, right? I'm not going to compare him to Arch Manning because he's not of the same fame by any means, but he does have a very popular. He's very popular. We'll put it that way. And so if and when Kaidon Salter struggles, the calls for Juju will be quick, they will be loud, and this Colorado fan base will be divided.
Yeah, just the way you like it for content purposes, right?
I never want to see anyone argue.
Yeah, that would be terrible. Like the Bill Hader meme. Oh, that's terrible. Yeah. Awful. Just terrible. Yeah, Kevin Borba, Locked On Buffs, not awful. Though hopefully you didn't think today's show was awful either. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.